Welcome back to the Employee Advocacy and Influence podcast. My name is Lewis Gray. My co-host, as always, is Elliot Elsley. And our special guest for today's episode is Agata Qanadilo, who joins us from AstraZeneca, where she is an employer brand and recruitment marketing manager. Now, working in the pharmaceutical sector, you might be forgiven for thinking that it's near impossible to leverage employee advocacy and employee-generated content. There's a lot of red tape and a lot of compliance concerns. But we know, if you've been listening to this podcast for a while, that that's just not the case. With the right tools, obviously, you can manage absolutely every aspect of your program effectively while ensuring that everybody stays compliant. And Agata is really a shining example of this in action, really, I would say. She set up everything from a employee advocacy program from scratch to a LinkedIn Academy to train employees to ensure that she can still leverage authenticity while ensuring that people do go away and create original content. So without further ado, let's get into the episode. So Agata, firstly, welcome to the podcast. It's an absolute pleasure to have you with us. I'm glad we can make this happen. Would you mind just giving our listeners an introduction to yourself and your role at AstraZeneca?
Sure. I'm Agata, and I'm an employer branding freak. In more sophisticated words, I'm an HR professional with 20 years of experience, majority of it spent in talent acquisition headhunting roles where I was connecting people to their dream jobs. And this is basically what I'm doing right now, just taking it from a different angle. So I'm currently an employer branding partner at AstraZeneca, having been doing this for 5 years.
Amazing. Yeah, thank you for giving us that intro. Obviously, we wanted to focus on the employee advocacy program today. And when we first spoke a couple of weeks back, you mentioned that when you joined AstraZeneca, there wasn't actually an employee advocacy program in place. So just curious to know, what made you want to build one from scratch?
Yeah, so when I was joining the company, there was nothing in terms of employer branding in place. And employee advocacy was a kind of need. And I quickly noticed that despite of my huge efforts to be an octopus and be everywhere and present us everywhere and do it as professionally as I could, I figured out that this was not something that I could do long term. And I realized that our people were the biggest asset I had, and turned everything around it. And decided to actually invest my time and efforts to switch from the one-man army to the army of gems and let them shine. So that's when I decided to start educating our people to make it as professionally as I tried to do it, or even better.
Was the predominant use case, like from the beginning, talent acquisition as well? Was it around kind of generating employer brand to generate talent, or was it a sort of more holistic approach of actually we want just more employees talking about everything that we do here?
Both. I think the talent attraction was one of the primary reasons. We were growing very dynamically at this point, and for next few years as well. So everything was very fast, quick, and urgent. I also knew that AstraZeneca was a great company, but nobody knew about us. Nobody knew what kind of employer we were, how many different departments, functions, and how great it is to actually grow in here. So that was the main reason.
And I guess you get that advantage of, it's AstraZeneca, it's quite complex work for a lot of the people that are doing things at AstraZeneca from like a research perspective. Did you kind of utilize it from that use case as well? Like, we've got niche roles that need very specialist abilities, and this is like a really good way to kind of get to those people.
Yes, we are. I think also the company with the biggest, most complex structure of the R&D part in Poland locally. So this is a huge advantage because this is the place where you can grow for years. Just switching roles in between departments, or not even leaving your department, and still feeling that there is a challenge and there is a space to grow. So additionally, there are so many different business units and with their own uniqueness, with their own needs, that I feel like I'm really working for 5 different companies at the same time.
So you mentioned during our initial conversation about the fact that AstraZeneca's Polish hub is almost was a playground for employer branding, in that you kind of had the freedom to try new things. But can you just walk us through what that meant and kind of how that helped when attempting to leverage employee advocacy?
Mm-hmm. The playground means that this is a space where I can really bring my ideas and test them all freely, working independently from the global perspective. So I align my strategy, my ideas to the local needs, the local market specifics, or local site ambitions. And additionally, from the playground point of view, this is a place where people are so passionate and eager to share their knowledge that whomever I approach, they're generally saying yes to everything I offer. So, but obviously, in the beginning, it was an exercise for me to explain how it works, what the employer branding means, and what are the differences between employer branding and recruitment marketing, and that it doesn't necessarily bring a certain number of CVs. But now I still feel the playground mood and vibe, and people know what it is, why they need it, why it's worth investing in it. And I still, with my own personal attitude, keep on bringing new ideas, testing them, and deciding what stays, what not. So the board, the senior leadership, also presents such an approach that they are letting people investigate and test innovations, and we are learning together somehow.
I think it was so interesting. And Elliot, I would love to get your perspective on this, just because, Agata, you and I obviously originally discussed this, but people assume that within pharmaceuticals, of course, there is, a lot of red tape. It's not an industry where you can just kind of freely go out and do too many different things. But obviously in this example, it was something that people were kind of willing to try. And like you just mentioned, your employees were willing to adopt this. But before we come on to kind of how you did it, can you just tell our listeners a little bit how you kind of went from being the sole voice when you were, starting this employer brand function, to empowering others? So how did you actually approach them and get them to start sharing?
I've noticed that it wasn't so easy in the beginning, because people had some concrete visions of what it means to have an employer branding partner in the structure, and these visions were not the same depending on whom I was approaching. So some of the top leaders were expecting me to bring 100,000 CVs after the event. Some were asking how it will improve our retention ratio. So I started from really educating from the very, very basics, the essentials. Sometimes it was even weird to make such sessions, educational sessions, but yeah, like these people don't need to understand what it means, right? So everybody knows what it means to recruit people. But employer branding was new to us and pretty new in the market as well. So not so well known. Anyway, putting together my educational efforts and their openness and also willingness to try new things and simply check if it works for them, not being sure what it can bring, it ended up with us really doing it. So pretty easy, but it wasn't so easy in the beginning. It took me a few months from the point when I was knocking to their doors, and then we switched to them knocking to my door.
I think that's always the case, isn't it? It's the initial start, and for anybody listening to this, the initial few months, I think particularly in a pharmaceutical, and my experience in pharma R&D, that kind of world, there's a natural fear from a lot of people, which is like, am I allowed to do this? What should I be doing? I'm very hesitant towards the idea of this. And then, as you say, you get people going, and then all of a sudden somebody goes, we should be getting 100,000 CVs through the door every day now because we're doing all of this stuff. And then you have to kind of retemper expectations and kind of manage more stakeholders than you realized even existed in a business half the time. It's a real skill to kind of move in that direction. So it sounds like, you've done a phenomenal job kind of getting that up and running.
Yeah, especially that, it's a constant discussion between the kind of stoppers or slowers. The external communications and compliance are doing their job really great, but it doesn't necessarily help me in my attempts. So it still continues this discussion, but that's exactly why people in such companies start with the belief that they shouldn't actually show off, speak up. They should stay calm, silent, behind the scenes, do their job, but not talk about it.
Yeah, the way I've always seen that, particularly that compliance element, because as you say, there's always somebody that has a reason why you shouldn't put a piece of content out, or there's always something that needs to change more often than not in this, in particularly in that pharma space as well.
Can you tell us about how you've balanced that at AstraZeneca, Agata, that enthusiasm for employee-generated content with compliance? What does that process look like?
Yeah, you should remember that I started in the COVID era where when AstraZeneca was very well known as a COVID vaccine producer, and it was not only a very positive light. It depended on the location, but in Poland we had a pretty hard time back and then. So probably mainly because of that, the other departments like the public relations, external comms, and compliance were very, very strict, and making sure that all of the employees follow the rules, know the rules, and follow the rules of not touching the topics that are, let's say, prohibited. We work in a pharma industry, but we, as AstraZeneca, are this kind of company which doesn't sell our drugs to general public. That's why the regulations are like hyper strict. And as you mentioned, we are not allowed to talk about the products. We are not allowed to talk about the results of our clinical trials and a few other topics, which is actually making the don'ts list pretty straightforward and short. So despite the fact that it is a strictly regulated industry, it's not so hard really to navigate. However, people working at AstraZeneca start being trained, being taught that it's very it's very important to follow the regulations. So for me, it was at first it was hard to understand how I can explain how it works and where the line between the risky talking on behalf of the company is and being a brand ambassador and employee advocate. But I managed to understand and to learn how to explain it in simple words. We also have very nice user-friendly internal policies which help me explain even in graphic way what is a do, what is a don't, and it works. It just means that I need to repeat it a few times. For example, during the LinkedIn Academy that I'm running, and also we conduct this education over and over again using all of the internal channels to make sure that nobody's going to mix it up. I mean, talking on behalf of a company, creating the content that is only under the ownership of the public affairs and external comms, the professional communicators. But it works, and it just needs a bit of additional effort.
I'm glad you've touched on training there, because that's definitely one that I want to touch on during this episode. But before I come on to that, with everything that you've got going on with the LinkedIn Academy, I'm just curious to know, have you seen moments where employee advocacy or employee generated content has directly impacted recruiting or brand reputation at AstraZeneca?
Well, I'm observing it continuously because we run a new hire service where I'm checking the candidate journey and all of the touch points that the candidate went through until they decided to apply and actually got here. This is what we are doing during the onboarding. And there are many occasions where I can see that people really read what we are writing about in social media, and they are listening to our people. They are meeting our people in different occasions, on conferences, job fairs, open doors, all of these events. I can also see the results somehow in the employer rankings, which prove the power of activities that I run, and employee advocacy is one of the huge part of it. I also know personally people who told me their stories. Even one of my team members got here based on my personal content shared on my personal LinkedIn account. And that's how she was recommended to me, and we worked together. So it really works.
I think having those anecdotes is so powerful as well, and I suspect that's probably really helpful for as you grow this across the business and in the region and business unit. Those little stories I tend to find are far more impactful than telling people any form of data at any point in time. You can talk about analytics, all day, all night, and clicks and click-through rates and engagement rates. But when you just say, oh, this person in my team was actually hired because they looked at a lot of my content and we had a conversation and it influenced their decision to press the apply button, that is way more impactful, particularly when you're training people and selling this into stakeholders, than any data you can typically present, I find.
You're right, but let's remember that recruiting people is not the only reason why we are doing this. I want to teach our employees how to create and manage their personal brands, and this is much more than just attracting the candidates, and this is also easy to calculate, right? They are checking their SSIs, they are reporting their progress, they are seeing their progress in terms of the reach of their posts, of the engagement with their posts. This is all that they come back with when filling out the satisfaction surveys, and this is I would even say now more important than just the number of CVs that come from this source.
I think that's a good sign, though. That's a sign of an advocacy program growing and maturing past like its initial kind of use cases as well.
Exactly. I really believe that this bunch of people is a collection of gems, and my role is to give them a space to shine. And it simply brings the talent attraction benefit just naturally, right?
I'm glad you mentioned about the fact that they were gems and you want to see them shine, because obviously the best way to go about doing that is what I wanted to come back to is training. And you mentioned the LinkedIn Academy that you're running at the moment, but obviously within the pharmaceutical space, training will be an essential part of this. But what does this, I don't know if it has a name, so I'll call it the AstraZeneca's LinkedIn Academy for the time being, but can you tell us what those trainings look like?
Yeah, that's how it's called exactly. But the name came just recently, last month. It started really small, from single consultations, from small group trainings led by an external LinkedIn trainer. Then it moved to more of the in-house initiative, as I decided that I actually know more about it and know the specifics of our company or our policies and the ambitions of our people much better than any external trainer. Then it went departmental. So one team signed up for such a training. A bunch of managers asked for a managerial boss branding type of training. And let's say it went viral, right? They started talking about it on the corridors. Their colleagues noticed the progress they made, the kind of word of mouth, and more people came, asked for next registrations, asked if I could run this kind of sessions for their teams, even specific 20 people, IT team of engineers who have nothing to do with LinkedIn and have nothing to do with personal branding, but they would like to be more visible internally and externally. So I tried many times. I don't know which batch it is right now, maybe 10th. I tried many times. I tried to improve every time, to gather the feedback, to check what worked and improve it. I made many mistakes. Sometimes the feedbacks were not fully positive, but this is what it is, right? I have like 25 people in the cohort of AstraZeneca LinkedIn Academy currently. It is now much better structured than before. They know exactly what to expect. There are external speakers being invited, so we are making it fun and nice to learn. We are learning from each other, and we teach them everything from very, very essential basics, like how to really create your LinkedIn profile, how to set up your settings to be really visible, how to create your network, or even before all of that, how to set up your ambition and then align the whole strategy to it. And then how to write, the storytelling sessions, the AI support for generating graphics and content, and so on and so forth. And we finished with conducting a mutual organic campaign, so that our participants learn how to create it step by step, and then they will be able to independently run one whenever there is a need.
I really appreciate it when people speak about the failures and the improvements they've had to make, because that's the stuff that people want to hear. So I appreciate you speaking so candidly about that. We did kind of touch on this in our initial conversation, actually, and you mentioned how kind of emotionally tough it can be when you invest all of this time putting together these trainings. And unfortunately, you could put together the best training in the world, as we've seen even, but you will still see periods of low participation. So in those times, how do you firstly stay motivated, but then what do you find works best to reignite things when results slow down a bit?
Yeah, so the biggest challenge for me was to understand that this is totally normal to see people drop off and resign in the middle of the program or right after finishing the program. From my perspective, it was all so clear and so attractive that I couldn't understand how someone could just resign from being active after that, right? And they all expressed huge enthusiasm and interest in building their brands and, you know, becoming active and doing it regularly and really implementing all of the knowledge they got. But then, one by one, they were just stopping because of the work load, because of some other things that happened, and it was hard to understand why. Was I doing something incorrectly? Like, is it my fault? Should it be maybe more structured? Should I bring some KPIs and tough, strong, strict metrics? But no. Now I understand that this is totally normal. I learned it from my colleagues from other companies and also from comms people from other sides. This is how it is, right? That's why I created this current cohort of the LinkedIn Academy, opening it to people from all over the world, AstraZeneca, from all of the AstraZeneca locations, because I know that some of them will simply decide that this is not actually something that they would like to do. I'm even telling them in the beginning, I don't want you to spend more time in social media, on LinkedIn, writing texts or writing articles. I just want you to understand how it works, what you can do, and decide whether this is something you want to do or not. In the worst case scenario, you will have a very polished professional profile and you will look good, treating it as a business card at the very least, which is still fine for me. It is a huge benefit for me. I prefer all of us to look good, right? And whenever you decide to incorporate it in your life, it can be in 1 year, in 5 years, whenever, right? It will be still relevant. And I'm also telling them that this is about turning on some mindset. So it's not about LinkedIn and writing posts on LinkedIn. It's about presenting themselves in the way they want to be known for. So it's about creating the presentations for conferences. It's about presenting something internally. It's about talking to their manager, talking to any stakeholder. So it's a kind of a wide general mindset that they will get, and it's up to them. So from me, it only requires constant remotivation and being like a phoenix. It may be hard at some point, but I know that it's worth it. I can see the results, sometimes not right after the cohort finishes, sometimes not in the survey that I'm asking them to fill out, but it comes after a month, after 2 months. They come to me and say, Agata, I improved my SSI by, I don't know, 10, 20 points, like, and it's only thanks to what I learned from you. So thank you so much. It's really valuable. I told my colleagues and I asked them to sign up for the next one. So I learned not to be impatient and not to expect the results right away. they sometimes come with time, and I strongly believe that it's still worth it. I will do it over and over again, twice a year, and no matter how many people will sign up, it's still worth it.
I always find, and I think there's an advantage that I've had in launching lots and lots of advocacy programs of all shapes and sizes. But in particular, I'm thinking about the really big advocacy programs that we've run where there's 10, 15, 20,000 people signed up to them. You mentioned about, naturally people kind of drop off and then sometimes they come back to it. That is, as you say, like the natural ebbs and flows of people's just working life. Sometimes you've got a big project that you're going to be talking about a lot on social media, and then that project completes and you're, prepping for the next thing, and there's not as much for you to talk about and be kind of, out there with. It is always going to happen with people. There are going to be times where they are too busy to post on social media. There are going to be times where they haven't got enough going on to really talk about on social media. It is just the nature of it. I always think it gets easier as programs get bigger, because then that variance, while some people might be having on a sort of down ramp, others are going to be on an up ramp, and it gets easier and easier and kind of more consistent. Early on, I completely agree. The amount of times where you see somebody go, well, I'm just not going to post for a few weeks because I've gone on holiday or I'm really busy or whatever it might be. And then all of a sudden you lose that participation. It can be really disheartening. But if you keep at it from that perspective and just more people, more stakeholders, more individuals, it just gets easier and easier, and everybody kind of feeds off each other, I tend to find as well.
Yeah, and especially that, I'm not using any platform, right? So the platform would give me kind of clear visibility of who's in, who's out, all of the dashboards and statistics, analytics. I'm using one as on a side, let's say, as an addition to the academy that I'm running, but it has a totally different goal.
I do just have two final questions for you, Agata. You've been so generous with your time today. But the first one was just around how you measure success, because you've mentioned about the fact that, you want to boost employee visibility, but also you're focused on employee satisfaction. So how are you measuring success from employee advocacy at AstraZeneca?
Yeah, so considering that I have these two goals, not only the external communication, but also the employee engagement, I measure both. So I measure the collective reach of the advocates who are simply manually filling the Excel files. And I'm measuring their satisfaction and that internal engagement aspect.
Got you. And then the last question, and this is where I'm going to ask you to kind of think forwards here. Obviously, you and your team at AstraZeneca have clearly been ahead of the curve. You mentioned about the fact you started this during, you mentioned lockdowns. We were probably talking around 2020, 2021 here. But how do you see the role of employee advocacy evolving in the pharmaceutical sector in the next 12 to 18 months?
The pharmaceutical industry is competing really hard. We have a true war for talent, and it's not getting easier with time. We, considering the local competitors, we are pretty similar. We have similar offers, similar salary levels, benefit packages, and nice offices. But what can differentiate us, and I know that this is actually one of the attributes of AstraZeneca that I'm eagerly playing with, what would help us win is the culture. And I cannot imagine any other better way to show the real working culture than through the lenses, experiences of individuals. So through the collection of personal experiences, all of the things that matter for individual people in many different business units, that will show the real picture of who we are as a company and how a certain person can match us, and if there is a match or not. And I believe this is a trying to even speed up the recruitment process when there is a self-matching process before the person applies. If they already know if the hiring manager or the team suits their needs, there is a simple decision, right? I should apply or I shouldn't apply, and this is it. So being natural and not faking it. Obviously, AI is helping us to increase the effectiveness, but not to really make up the picture of who we are.
I think that's a fantastic answer. I can't really add much more to that other than I couldn't agree with you more, to be perfectly honest. And I'm obviously not working in the pharmaceutical sector myself. It's a fantastic closing statement, I would say. So, Agata, thank you so much for joining us today. Everybody who's listening, watching, please do go follow Agata and follow her work on LinkedIn. But thank you so much for chatting with us. It's been an absolute pleasure.
Thank you. Pleasure is mine. Thank you.
Thanks for listening, everyone. Bye-bye.
Bye.